Hi, welcome to Voices. I'm your host, Keith Major. Our very special guest today is none other than the president of the Atlantic Caribbean Union Mission, Pastor Leonard Johnson. Pastor Johnson, welcome to the program.
It's good to be back on the program, Brother Keith.
Pastor Johnson, you've been to and fro the earth, traveling here and there, so how has that been going?
Well, the responsibility of a union president is to travel throughout the union territory and at times to go even beyond that. But God is really blessed and He continues to bless. And I guess we'll have an opportunity to talk more about some of these trips.
Yes. I'll come back to your travels. We're nearing the end of the first quarter. This week, I think, ends the quarter of your union. Give us a little update on how things are going in the union. What are some things that you've accomplished? How are baptisms? What's happening in the union?
The year 2013 is the year of the laity, Brother Keith, and this has been a very exciting year for us in the Atlantic Caribbean Union. We started off the year with a number of lay crusades, and we're so happy and thrilled based on all the reports that we've received from the Cayman Islands Conference, from the North Bahamas Conference, from the South Bahamas Conference, and the Turks and Caicos Islands Mission. I can single out Dave Williams, for instance, in the South Bahamas Conference, what he has done on the island of Exuma. I can think about moving away from the lay crusade to one of the most successful campaigns we've had during the first quarter. It's been in the Cayman Islands Conference. The Cayman Islands Conference has been given a goal of about 305 souls for 2013. And would you believe it? When I was in the Cayman Islands a week ago, they were nearing 280 baptisms already for the year.
Yes.
They have actually formed a new church thus far this year. And so it's very exciting. We are in the process now of deciding on an individual who will go to the media committee of the Inter-American Division. This is going to be the outstanding lay person for the union. And so we've had a preliminary meeting and there's someone that we have looked at, but we just want to make sure that the field leader gets an opportunity to talk with the person, because if that person cannot accept or doesn't have the time to make the trip, there's a backup individual. And so I tell you, we are very excited about what has taken place in the first quarter. Evangelism was the main thing, and we know that we're doing well throughout the entire union. Separate and apart from evangelism, some other activities that transpired, the young people had this emphasis or focus on Be the Sermon a few weekends ago. They've gone into the hospital, they've gone into the police stations, they've gone in Rawson Square, just reaching out to various communities and seeking to share the gospel by their presence, moving away from church on a Sabbath morning and actually being the sermon. That was rather impressive as I spoke with Pastor Burris, our youth director. And then also, I think about the Shepherdess ministry headed by Denise Johnson. They were in the Cayman Islands and had a very successful weekend. And we had the representative from the division, Leticia de los Santos, and was her first visit to the Cayman Islands. So as you can see, we're trying to target all of our region. And I should have mentioned when I dealt with the matter of evangelism, I don't know how we forgot this. We were pleased to welcome Pastor Danny Francis, the personal ministries secretary for the Caribbean Union with his headquarters in Trinidad. And he went over to the Turks and Caicos Islands mission where he preached for 2 weeks. And some 12 persons were baptized. I was privileged to go over to Belize representing our union and preach for 10 days. And we baptized some 31 persons in the initial crusade, the initial baptism. But the week after I had left, some 10 to 12 persons, additional persons, were baptized. And then the final thing that I can think about in terms of the first quarter, we sponsored a Logos Bible software training
Yes.
for pastors, elders, and any church member.
Yes.
And that was very exciting. You were a participant, Brother Keith, and
yes.
I tell you, it's never a dull moment when you get into the Word of God and you're looking at the mechanics. So these were some of the events that transpired that I just wanted to highlight.
Yes, yes. Yes, that Logos training, I use it every morning. I'm a Greek specialist now, so
Is that so?
I can get the foundations of my texts.
Greek and Hebrew.
Oh yes, yes. It was really wonderful.
Well, that's good.
Looking forward to the upcoming quarter, very briefly. What are some of the things you anticipate? I know there's election in one of the conferences towards the end of the quarter, and there are a number of other initiatives. I think mid-year union meetings. What are some of the issues or events coming up in?
In the second quarter, we continue with the thrust of evangelism. We are going into Colombia in terms of Pastor Al Powell and also Pastor Wilson Isnot from the Turks and Caicos Island Mission, and Pastor Al Powell, who is our personal ministries director for the union, but also the executive secretary for the Cayman Islands Conference. These were the two persons who were chosen by the union to represent us. So they'll be going to Bogota, and from there, Pastor Al Powell, during the month of June, as we end this quarter, this second quarter coming up, will be going to New York as one of the 300 evangelists. Some 300 crusades will take place in New York. And our General Conference president, and he will be leading out in a crusade. And by the way, he's coming to our union in July. In particular, he's coming to Nassau, Bahamas, and we'll say more about this at the appropriate time. So he's going to be with us for a day, a Sabbath, and that is going to be exciting. So separate and apart from what I've mentioned to you, the mid-year committee meeting for the division, as I mentioned earlier, where we will have a lay person from our union who will be in attendance. But also, we will have, for the first time, a youth representative who has been chosen from the Turks and Caicos Islands Mission. Is one of our students at NCU, and she has been chosen, so she is going to be the youth representative for the union sitting on that committee during our mid-year committee in Miami. In addition, Pastor Michael Smith, the president of the Turks and Caicos Islands Mission, is the new rotating member, having now replaced Pastor Errol Tinker, who was the member from Macomb, the pastor administrator on the division committee. And so these persons will be there. So we're going to have 3 persons apart from the officers of the union who will be attending that mid-year committee. Coming out of the mid-year committee, Brother Keith, we will go to the North Bahamas Conference, where we will host our mid-year committee. I want to make this clear. We are seeking to take some of the committee meetings and also our mid-year symposium. We want to take these out of Nassau, where the union headquarters is situated, so that in the Cayman Islands they can experience their union in a close and significant way. In the Turks and Caicos Islands Mission, likewise. But this particular time, we're talking about the North Bahamas Conference. And this is timely because it ties in with the time of their conference session. And so the conference session will kick off on the 1st of June. So that's going to be taking place in the North Bahamas Conference. And then we have our mid-year committee, we have our symposium, and then we also have our training also in the North for leaders. And so that's going to be exciting. These are some of the things that will transpire separate and apart from, we have graduations for a number of the schools throughout the union territory. So it's going to be another exciting time, a very busy one, but we're confident that God will continue to bless this union.
When you, very quickly, you mentioned training, leadership training.
Yes.
Just tell me a little bit about that.
Every year, the union, in tandem with the division, will sponsor a leadership training. The idea, based on our strategic plan, is to equip our leaders. And so last year, we met in Nassau, and we were pleased to welcome Dr. Lowell Cooper
yes.
from the General Conference.
Right.
He was with us, and this year, in June, we will have from the Inter-American Division, Pastor Baldwin Braham. And in addition, we will have Pastor Harold Lee,
Yes, he was here.
who will be with us. So these will be the two persons who will be leading out in the leadership training.
Okay.
And that's going to be very exciting. So you can see the second quarter is also a very busy one for us.
Yes, I'm glad to see the church focus on leadership
So,
training.
yes.
I think it's very good in this world that we live in nowadays. Pastor Johnson, you have been traveling beyond your union. You have been you had a recent trip to Europe. What was the purpose of this trip? What does this have to do with the great controversy? And tell us about why this trip. Who were there, and what was the purpose of it?
Well, you know, Brother Keith, as you've indicated, I did travel to places outside of the Union territory, and this was rather strategic, and it was planned. The Inter-American Division planned over a year ago a trip for all Union presidents, the officers of the division, and the heads of all of our seminaries throughout the Union territory. What was the purpose of this? To revisit the sites of the Reformation. And so for me, I'm holding this book in my hand, and when you look at it, you can see the thickness of this book. We needed to complete this entire booklet. This represents 3 graduate credits.
Okay.
So a part of the requirements was to read The Great Controversy. I completed that by January of this year. And then we started on our trip where we flew out from Miami to London, from London to Rome. While in Rome, we went to the Vatican City. It was rather interesting. A week before the election of the new Pope. And as we toured the Vatican City, the revelation, the prophecy and the writings that we find in the book of Revelation, and the world wonders after the beast, in a literal sense. You should see the amount of people who would gather daily at the Vatican City. People who flocked to that particular area. But for us, as a part of our training, we wanted to look at the Church of Rome in relationship to the matter of the persecution of the early Christian believers. We were also privileged to visit the Mamertine prison, where it's believed that Paul and Peter were prisoners.
Okay.
It's a dungeon. It's a rather gloomy place, small, and we were there, and I remarked to myself, man, I tell you, for Paul to be as positive as he was, even though he had some low moments, he must have experienced the presence of God in that prison cell. When you read Acts of the Apostles, Ellen White, under inspiration, says some rather interesting things about the Apostle Paul. But it was of such to not only inspire us, but to confirm what is already in the Bible, the prophecies, and what is going to take place. Because from Rome, we traveled to France, we traveled to Germany, and to Switzerland. But in Germany, where you have the home of Martin Luther, the reformer, over Germany, when we look at some of the historical sites related to the Reformation, the crowds were not anything that we saw, close to anything that we saw in Rome at the Vatican City. Isn't that amazing? Look at the courage that was demonstrated by Luther. Look at Calvin. Look at Huss. And then, but I should have said before we left Rome, to go to the site of the Waldenses, where they operated in that particular valley and also in this mountainous area. It was rather interesting to see as we went into one of the caves. It could hold about 200 persons. To get into this cave, we had to go through the mouth of the cave, and so you had to actually stoop. It was a touching experience as we were on the inside of this cave, and we sang the hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is our God. We could only think about the courage they displayed. You know, those persons were really persecuted by the Church of Rome simply because they wanted the people to know the Word of God. The church, unfortunately, back then, kept the Bible away from the members. Only the bishop, only the priest had access to the Word of God. The Waldenses sought to write out portions and sections of the Bible, and they would go into the city and share the Word of God with people. Their ministers had to commit to memory large and major portions of the Word of God. Now look at us today. We have the Word of God all around us. Some of us have several versions, several copies. Do we pick up the Word of God? It brings to mind something I heard. The devil is not afraid of a Bible with dust on it.
So tell me, what, and this is I can actually feel being there the way you describe it. What has this done for you as an ultimate preacher of the gospel? This experience, these things you see. How has this, and maybe it's too early to tell, how will this impact your sharing of the word, or how you take your job as a leader of a union territory?
Well, for one, it has awakened in me, or reawakened, the need for more prophetic preaching. The book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. As I traveled back to Nassau the other evening, coming on the plane, I was reading Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 9. The first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel is rather easy. But when you look at Daniel chapter 2, which gives you a sort of view of world prophecy, dealing with the kingdom of Babylon going to the second coming of Jesus Christ. When you come to Daniel 7, it is actually expanding more on what you find in Daniel chapter 2. And so when we come to Daniel chapter 12, it talks about a time of trouble. We must, as Adventists, leaders and preachers, become very excited and very strategic in preaching from the books of Daniel and Revelation. Some of the prophecies are difficult to explain, but they can be explained. We have the information. Our people need to know this information. You'll also notice that in 2 ministerial weeklies that I've done since that particular trip, I referred to hymns. We have what is known in our church as praise and worship, and in some of the churches, they have sought to remove the hymnal altogether. That is very dangerous, Brother Keith. I've actually said this to some of the leaders thus far. We must be careful that we do not throw away the baby with the bath water. And let me explain what I mean by that. Those hymns, you recall I talked about A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Those hymns are loaded with theology and meaning. And if we are not careful, we will give birth to a group of young people who have no appreciation for what Adventism or the Adventist Church is coming out of, and our history, our meaning. We will be viewed as just another church, but not the remnant church, a church of Bible prophecy. We must be careful as leaders and as pastors to ensure that our members know and understand what time it is and what is to take place, what is to come about. Revelation chapter 13 is so significant. The 3 angels' messages and where we are. And so coming out of this trip to Europe, to the different places in Europe, it has only served to anchor what I had studied before. And it has underscored the need to be very, very deliberate in preaching more of the prophetic messages of our church.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, President Johnson describing a trip that he had experienced and all the current activities and what it has done to him and will do to his preaching. President Johnson, in 30 seconds, what would you say to your members very quickly if you had 30 seconds worth of stuff to say?
Keith, I would encourage our members to take seriously the initiatives that are being sponsored by the conference and the unions, where we call upon members to read The Great Controversy, or to read a particular book of Ellen White, to read the Word of God, to spend time praying, as we spend time in the Word, we begin to understand more and more about the will of God. We're drawn closer to God. All the issues, the problems, and things that come our way, a relationship with God gives you a different outlook. Just in a conversation earlier today, I was speaking with an individual from one of our churches, and he was relating to me miracle after miracle. It was so touching. I could not break away, even though I needed to do so for an appointment. But I was so captivated, I was so moved by how God worked for him and the fact that God is working today. And so I would simply say to you, my brother, my sister, what a golden opportunity during this time of freedom to pick up the Word of God, to read it, to digest it, and let it become a part of us. The psalmist says, thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. The Word of God is our light, is our lamp, it is our guide.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching.